am a big proponent of go slow to go fast. And people always look at me and they're like, oh, you've accomplished so much at your age and all this and that. And it's almost because I wasn't doing mindlessly. I've always been doing very intentionally. And I think that happens a lot. Like if you've had, most people have had some kind of challenge in their life and no one's life is perfect. And for me, like it was never enough to just overcome that challenge, but I wanted to land somewhere better than I could have even imagined. And for me to do that, I always felt like intentionality was the fastest way to get somewhere where I didn't even imagine. And that's what I mean by the possibility of different, because there's a lot of people who always ask themselves they always say what they can't do. And I've always been focused on what I can do. And even more than that, what can I do that wasn't even possible before this change or this whatever came and disrupted my life? Like the remote work thing, it's like you could look at that as what a terrible thing. I'm not in the office anymore. I'm not going to be able to get all this stuff done. And on the other hand, you could look at it as, but now I have this opportunity to manage my energy better. I have a chance to take a second look at my life and see what's important to me. I've seen so many people reevaluate their social communities during this time because maybe they were relying on work to be their community. And now that they don't have that just very natural, easy overlap, they're like, wow, who's really here? And so it's like, wow, that's now, however you return to work or return to normal, you could have this whole new possibility that you never imagined without the pandemic happening, right? Like you never could have imagined that. And you could go back actually in a better place than you were before. And that's so important to me. Like that's how I live my life is like, I'm like, what's the possibility here? And if I can't see possibility, I go talk to you, right? I go talk to other people. Because just because I don't think something's possible doesn't mean someone else hasn't already done it or doesn't have a different point of view.
What do you think influenced you early on to have that? You started out as a chemical engineering major, which by itself, that was still a male dominated field, even though in college it might have been a little more equitable gender wise. But here you were, a chemical engineer. You went into Procter and Gamble. So talk about what was that? How did it morph for you from that? I mean, you always kind of had that vision, or even when you were younger?
I think possibility thinking for me, it was a natural consequence of growing up the way I did. So my parents are both immigrants. They had an arranged marriage. We grew up in Texas. There was a lot of like polar opposites happening in my life from a very early age, like the Eastern Western thinking, trying to overlap, like make sense of that. Being in Texas, my mom being vegetarian, trying to do that. My parents ended up not working out, which is very rare in the Indian community. And so like now we're not quite Indian or, we're not quite fitting anywhere. And like, I think just from a self-preservation standpoint, I could have sat there and felt really honestly shitty about myself and my life, or I could be like, what's good about this? And what was really good about all of that was I became super capable at a young age. And I noticed this, and I find myself identifying with other people whose parents have gone through divorce. You just take on a little bit more as a kid. Yeah, that sucks. But also, wow, there's so many things I feel confident about doing. Another good thing is I've always, because of that, had a lot of practice in seeing the different poles and being able to identify with them and figure out what's good about both of them. So the Eastern-Western views, there's some good things about Western and there's some things I don't love as much. And there's some good things about Eastern and things I don't love as much personally. And I try to blend those together. So I think that possibility thinking started very young for me.
I love that. I love
almost
that.
as a self-preservation. Because otherwise, man, I think I would be like down and in the dumps a lot with all.
And looking ahead kind of gets you out of maybe an uncomfortable present situation. You look at dreams and possibilities.
Always.
Yeah.